Well, buen Camino Pilgrims, I'm Jeremiah Gibbs. I am your Camino guide. And today I want to talk about whether it's smart or whether it's even possible for you to make Camino de Santiago in 2022. I know that many of you are thinking about making a pilgrimage this year. I want to talk about whether that's possible, what are some of the factors you need to consider. So stay tuned, and I hope that you'll find this helpful as you plan your Camino de Santiago in 2022. I hope that you will put in the comments some of the factors that you're considering. Some of them I may be able to respond to. Others of your comments may just be helpful for others that are making a plan. So definitely put in the comments some of the things that you are thinking about, and I hope that others will find that helpful too. I think we've really got to think about several different factors here, several different questions about whether Camino is possible this year. The first question is it going to be legal? And of course, everything that I'm going to say here is going to be my opinion. It is but opinion based on someone who keeps up with this quite a lot because of this channel, who's planning a pilgrimage for 30 pilgrims, more than 30 pilgrims this year, and who's somebody who has been, I was just on Camino in July, on Camino Francés. And so I have some experiences that I think, give me some sort of expertise, if you will. But I'm just a person. I can't predict the future any better than anyone else. Certainly, there's lots of unknowns right now, but this is what I believe is going to be the case. And with regard to the question, is it going to be allowed? Is it going to be legal to travel Camino de Santiago in 2022? I think the answer to that is going to be a yes. First of all, Spain has really been aggressive in trying to recover their tourism industry that has really been decimated by COVID. And so Spain is being really aggressive about trying to get people to come back to travel to Spain. And in addition to that, we've now seen a lot of language from Spain, the first country to begin to talk about treating COVID as an endemic disease instead of as a pandemic. That means that there'd be much more sort of normal regulations related to COVID transmission and things rather than these kind of aggressive things that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So I think those two things, as well as just the vaccination rates in Spain, even though right now as I make this in January 2022, the COVID numbers in Spain are just astronomically high. They have quite a large surge that they're going through and seem to just be cresting over the top of that right now. But Spain is over 90% vaccinated, and so most of those people are not getting particularly ill. There's not a lot of hospitalizations, not a lot of deaths related to this very severe surge in COVID related to the Omicron variant. So even though there is a lot of COVID in Spain right now, and right now the State Department for the United States has raised that to a level 4 travel warning. No one is prohibiting travel right now, even during this very serious wave. I should say no one. The United States are not, and I don't believe that other European countries are prohibiting travel to Spain. So right now, it's very possible to travel to Spain to make the pilgrimage. I don't expect that to change this year, although, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things have changed frequently. But my expectation is that it will be legal to travel to Spain for Camino de Santiago this year. I highly expect that your albergues are going to stay open, that Camino is going to stay open. I think the Holy Year extending into 2022 is going to put additional pressure on folks to keep the Camino open as much as possible during this year. So I expect really aggressive policies related to that. Now, the second question I think many people will be asking is not so much is it legal, but is it smart? Is it wise for me to make the pilgrimage during this pandemic? And of course, your risk tolerance is the thing that's going to be the biggest factor there. And so if you have a fairly high risk tolerance that you are willing to be able to go ahead and give it a shot, then I don't think you're going to have any problem, because at least the risk, my experience of the risk are not different than anywhere else that I have been or in my own hometown. So I don't expect that the risks are going to be a lot higher, but there are some risks associated. Certainly traveling on a plane has certain kinds of COVID risk involved. The albergues are probably the highest risk area, but there hasn't been a lot of transmission that has happened in albergues this end of this year. And so I mean, part that's due to reduced capacities there, but that is the highest risk area, I think, for transmission, because much of our eating, much of our walking, it's all outside where there's well ventilated and so on. So I think certainly there is some risk associated with being in the albergues, being on a plane, being in public transportation. But on the whole, I would say that COVID risk is not significantly higher than if you were in your own hometown and going out to eat and so on. So for me, that risk is not great enough that I'm concerned about it, but I know that for some, your risk tolerance is lower, and so you've got to make that decision for yourself about whether you can make Camino this year. Now, I think the third question that many people ask is, maybe I can go and maybe my wrist would tell me that it's okay, but I don't want to experience the Camino the way that it is now. I've heard a lot of people talking about that the Camino has changed in some significant way because of COVID, and so they've decided that maybe they wouldn't want to make Camino this year. And my experience, I was there in July, this past July of 2021. I did not notice that Camino was any different than any other time I've been on Camino. We still had great experiences on the walking, and the prayer experience was not significantly different. The churches were still open, and as long as you're respectful, you were able to be in the churches and be there for prayer. The meals and so on restaurants were still open. We were able to eat meals. There were some of the albergue kitchens that were closed. That just meant that in those towns you needed to go out and to eat in the restaurants or the bars. But, you know, for the most part, my experience of other pilgrims, the conversations that we had, the relationships that we built were not any different than on any other Camino. And in fact, if you've been watching this channel, you know that I went to Belgium back in November to visit some of the Camino friends that I made in just a couple of weeks that I was on Camino back in July. Because the deep relationships we formed there, we decided, a bunch of us, to get together and have a reunion in Brussels, Belgium back in November. So the relationships are just as high a quality. The experience of prayer and the experience of walking is, I would say, unchanged. You know, really the question is simply about, are you willing to wear a mask? Are you going to have some slightly reduced capacities in the albergues? You may need to make reservations a little further ahead. Like on this Camino, I was making reservations for the same day, which I probably would not have done in other circumstances. But I was making reservations the day of, and then once they got closer to Sarria, it became necessary to make reservations, you know, a few days out or a week out, but because things did get busier there. But on the whole, I would say the experience of Camino is the same as it always is. That certainly should not be a reason to not make Camino this year. I will say that I think if you are planning to make Camino this year, there are going to be a few things that you're going to want to do. First of all, you're going to want to remain flexible, because certainly, even though I've given this advice and said, hey, I think it's going to be fine this year, you have to remain flexible because things change so quickly in the middle of all this. We're unprecedented kinds of rules and regulations changes, and certainly the country that you live or Spain could restrict travel at any moment. You've got to be able to, if you can't make the plan and know that maybe it will get changed just a couple of weeks before you leave or something, then maybe it's not the year for you to make Camino. If you don't think you can have that kind of flexibility, then certainly that you may decide that you want to wait so that you don't have to have that kind of flexibility built in. For us, even though we're making a trip with 32 people, I don't have a lot of flexibility in how we do that, but I am going to buy the tickets as late as I can manage because that will provide us some more options of being able to cancel cancel if we had to be able to do that. There are a couple other things I would say. One, it is going to cost a little bit more. Some of the albergues have raised their prices modestly. Some of the restaurants are a bit more expensive. I don't think it's a big cost increase from what I experienced in July, but there is a somewhat a modest cost increase that has come because of the pandemic. The other thing that I would say is, I personally would not fly out on the weekend. It becomes a little more difficult to get your COVID testing done. The airport COVID testing does run on the weekends, but some of the other testing sites do not. So I would recommend that when you leave Spain, you plan to do that during the middle of the week, where it will be easier for you to get COVID testing before you fly out of the country. So that's my take. I think it's a great year to make Camino. The Holy Year is on. There will be lots of folks flocking back to make Camino. I hope that you will decide to do the same. Again, put in your comments in the comments here about what are some of the factors that you're considering, and I'll try to answer as many of those as I can if there are things that you would like me to give my opinion on. And certainly if you are planning to make Camino, then I hope that you will subscribe to this channel, click the like button. That will tell YouTube to send this out to other people, and tell YouTube to send those videos to you, because I've got videos about logistics and planning. I've got videos about equipment and some of the theology and spirituality of Camino as well. So I hope to be able to help you make the way to Camino de Santiago as well. Buen Camino, pilgrims. I hope to see you on the way.